actually really want to ask you, how do you stay so grounded in all of that? Because you're one of the most grounded people I know.
Well, that's a better question.
That's a better question. Thank you.
Yeah. You really think I'm grounded?
I do.
I don't know if I'm that grounded. I'm grounded enough in my discipline, certainly. I can work hard. There was nothing like Star Trek Voyager for work. I'll tell you that. I mean, that was 18 hours a day for 7 years. In 4.5-inch heels, mind you.
And 3 children.
And 2 children at home that I'm raising. I was divorced, single mother. So I am not afraid of hard work. I embrace it. And I would say if you combine that discipline with even a modicum of passion, you're well on your way. And I had iron discipline and great passion. I wanted to be a very good actress. To that end, I studied with Stella Adler. I mean, I really threw myself into it. But I was not without great confidence. I had confidence. Perhaps my mother had given this to me. Perhaps I just had it. I don't know. When you ask me, how did I feel when I found myself mildly famous at 20? I think I thought, that's great. Let's go. Because in 45 years, I can assure you, it's gone like this. It has not been a trajectory like Meryl Streep. It has been, where's the road? Finding the road again. Finding the road, losing it, finding it, losing it, finding it. But I've had 4 remarkable lily pads. I had Mary Ryan, Mrs. Columbo, Captain Janeway, and Galina Resnikoff. Most actresses just don't come close to that.
Just to talk, there's 2 things I wanted to ask you about. One was we were just talking earlier about the gender pay gap and about how it was, say, as Captain Janeway, you were the female lead, obviously, surrounded by a lot of men.
I was the first female captain to start with. Evidently, of the Starship Enterprise. So funny. She said it 4 times and she had no idea why.
But so that I mean, it was wonderful, I'm sure. But as you said, it was 16 hours a day. How many days a week were you working?
5 days a week.
Yeah.
But press was expected, demanded certainly the first couple of seasons, and the weekend was devoted to the boys. But I mean, I was in a coma on the soccer field. It was really hard. Really hard because I'm not a fool. I played Katharine Hepburn in a one-woman show called Tea at 5, and I researched her to within an inch of her life. And I discovered that she was very self-examined. And she said about herself when she was a young woman, I'm not going to have children ever. It's going to be about me. Once you have a child, you're dead. And she's right. Once you have a kid, it's about the kids. Now I'll tell you all this, and don't feel sorry for me. Well, you can if you want to. But my boys never saw me on Voyager. They've never seen me on television. They've never seen me on TV. They'll come to the theater, but they won't watch me on television because their memory of television is my absence. And for that, I will not be forgiven. No, you can't have it all.
No, you can't.
No, you can't. I did the best. I hate that expression. We talked about that earlier today, didn't we?
Yeah.
Everybody says, oh, I'm doing the best I can. The fact is, we make choices. I wanted it all. And I guess you can't have it all.
Well, you made a good stab at it.
I made a good stab. But I think that was hard on them. Very hard.
Yeah, well, they've turned out pretty good.
They have?
Can we just talk about when we talk about Orange is the New Black?
Yes.
I mean, this is an amazing role. And it was an amazing series. So it's a kind of a groundbreaking series. It was a flagship for Netflix.
Yes.
Still is. It's coming into its 7th season. We've recorded the 7th season. You're about to fly off to launch that next week.
Yeah.
What was it like playing in that kind of huge ensemble cast and playing a character over, who has a very different trajectory over that 7 seasons and over that period. I mean, you must have really got stuck into it.
Well,
you had to get stuck.
I'm an old dog. So when I went down, we all had to audition. Nobody was offered anything. Everybody had to audition, certainly the top roles. And I was given this very slight piece of paper, not even this big. Galina Reznikov is of Russian extraction, but she's fully assimilated into the American culture. So please, in your audition, don't lay on that. Just tap it, ever so lightly. We don't want we don't want the audience thinking about anything about Russia. Oh, okay. But this is what came out of my mouth. And guess what? I think they wanted a real Russian, right?
But you weren't Russian for it.
It wasn't Russian, and she wanted a real Russian actress. She scoured the world for a real Russian actress. She had them all come in, and they were very good at doing that, and they were very good at doing this and that. But they didn't know how to weep, and they didn't know how to be tough, and all that stuff that comes so naturally to me. I loved her. And I loved Tit Punch. If any of you have seen it, that's the episode, the name of the episode that introduces Red Reznikov, right? She wants to be a part of the Russian, group. She wants to be in the in-group with the Russian women, so she's always running after them and telling them that stupid joke about the eggplant. And they keep saying, we don't get your stupid jokes, right? And once she just screamed and she said, you don't get it because you're stupid. And I punched her tit. And the tit goes. And the Russian husband comes to my husband and says, that's all right. Your wife wants to go around punching tits? That's 50 grand. Or else. 50 grand, widow. So I took the fall. And that's when I went to Litchfield. And the first few years were absolutely intoxicating. I knew there was no pony like this ever before in television. That it was the advent of the golden age of television. That Netflix was in the vanguard. That Jenji Cohen was a genius. And that Piper Kerman had let that slender little autobiography slip through her fingers, and we were off to the races. And then it did get very, very crowded, I felt, in season 5. I mean, there were 500 women on the call sheet, right? It was a lot. But Genji's idea was, and don't ever argue with the genius, because that's the truth of prison. So, it's over now.
It's over, yeah.
It will stream on the 25th, the last season. And for those of you who are fond of Orange is the New Black, get out your tissues.
No!
Get your wine. And get your buddy. Because it's tough. Oh, did you think it was going to be happy? Really tough. Next question.
Okay, here's a question. What was your favourite role of all?
Of all?
Of all.
Well, you can't do that, no.
Okay.
TV and theatre and movies?
Okay, let's say theatre. What was your favourite role in theatre?
I'm supposed to say Hedda Gabler because it's the greatest role written for a woman, one of the greatest, right? Hedda Gabler, Ibsen being the master of modern theatre. And it was great, but I'm not sure I was up to her. I was up to Clytemnestra in Iphigenia. I would say that I loved playing Clytemnestra. Yeah, there's a silence falling over the blue. But it was, Greek tragedy, yum.
What about Catherine Hepburn?
I love that.
It was reprised a number of times, wasn't it?
Yeah, but it was exhausting. It's a one-woman show. It's very lonely. And I had to exercise that discipline again. That's lonely life. You don't go out. You can't go out. You have to go home. You have to rest your voice. In Act 1, I'm all over it. And in Act 2, I'm doing it every night. In front of people all over the place. It really had to go home. Yeah.
Okay, here's another question for you. We were talking about...
But let me answer this.
Okay.
Captain Janeway, of course. I went to the great French-Canadian actress, Geneviève Mulgrew, who lasted, I think, 24 hours. And she called in the producer, and she said, "Oh, mon Dieu, who can work like this? It's insane. I have a child, I have a life, I can't do it, I'm going home. Goodbye." And they brought back in the 5 of us who were sort of front runners. And I did my audition, I got the part. And I was shot out of that cannon, and I make my first entrance onto the bridge from my ready room. And I remember standing in there with the director, Rick Colby, shaking like a leaf. Because if this is the bridge, and you guys in the front seat, there were 50 men in suits. Let's see what this little broad has to offer. I mean, they were absolutely defying me, I felt. So Colby said to me in the ready room, "It's your living room. This is your home. Take it."
Good.
Ready room doors open, and I walked out, and that was a brilliant moment.
Woo!
Did you learn much science?
Did I learn what?
Much science.
Much what?
Science. Space science. Astronomy. Did you learn much about?
About astronomy?
Yeah.
Oh, Are you kidding? You should have given me a medal for that technobabble. The fact that Stuart and I talked about it, it's agony. I would have preferred Japanese. In fact, I wanted Japanese. In fact, I called and said, "Make it Japanese." That technobabble was absolutely out of this world, and I had pages of it. And I was getting up at 3:30 in the morning and leaving my 2 little boys and driving to Paramount Studios. And I finally said to myself, there's got to be an easier way, because I'm dying. I'm going to find out what it means. And I went to the Akuta Bible, which led me to Richard Feynman, the great physicist, and I started to read. And in fact, almost everything on Star Trek Voyager that emanated from this mouth was rooted in fact and in science. And once I understood that, and I could make those associations, then I endowed it with authenticity.
You did learn lots of science.
Yeah, I did.
That's good.
But astronomy, I don't know. Yeah.
Kate, if you had a gun to your head and you were told you could act or you could write, which would you do?
Now,
Yeah.
you're a little devil. You really are. She knows she's got me. I can't have both. I love this process of writing. Wow, it's liberating at this stage. I never thought I'd get it. And I have. This is my second book. Truly, the most enriching process. So quiet, so lonely. But solitude now is something I love. Whereas when I was a young actress, I couldn't have borne it, I don't think. I suppose if you forced my hand. And I cannot tell a lie. I don't know. I suppose because we're all Pavlovian, aren't we? I suppose I'd have to take acting. I know it. I know it. I'm familiar with it. It feels safe. This is a dark hole. This is a black hole. This is tough. I never knew where I was going. And I was staying in this absolutely beautiful house on Loch Corrib in the wintertime. Sheets lacerating rain day after day. Bleak, damp winters of Western Ireland, right? But the conditions were perfect. Because it made me so lonely and so frightened and so focused that that this was forced out. And the truth came out. I love that. Do you understand what I mean? Whereas when you're young, you love the other. So I don't know. I want them both.
Do you think there's another one? Yeah.
Another book or another role?
Another book.
Yes, there is another
Woo!
book.
Woo!
I'm already talking about it. It's a novel. There may be a murder, depending on my mood. There will be love affairs, abounding.
Now, I'm just conscious that maybe, would you like to read another?
Shall I read one more brief passage?
Yes,
Yes!
And then what we'd like to do, which I'd like to do, I'd like to take questions.
Yay!
If some of you have questions, right? Now, I read you a nice passage. This is a little bit darker. My father has not much time to live. Very little time.
Yeah.
Sitting on my father's bed, waiting for him to die, I took my time before calling down to Joe. I wanted to be alone with my father. I wanted to rest with him. I studied his face for what I knew would be the last time, and felt as I had always felt when my father slept, that he was never really completely asleep, but only waiting to be disturbed by the rude noises of children, his wife playing Chopin badly on the piano, a car full of friends pulling into the driveway, a daughter across the hall packing her suitcase, cursing the insufficiency of her wardrobe. He had been eager for me to leave the nest. This was something I felt acutely, and consequently I had moved in that direction with preternatural focus. Why he was so anxious for me to get out of the house and into the world remains a mystery, and one that will never be solved. The evidence, however, suggests that he was self-centered and maybe a little jealous. He was tired of watching me monopolize my mother's time and attention, and was further frustrated by her obvious pride in me. She had always championed me, and in an act of deliberate perverseness, my father took the opposite approach. Perhaps he thought he was preparing me for the harsh realities of the world, or perhaps he didn't give a damn. I'm inclined to believe that he didn't really care what I did or where I went, as long as I got the hell out of his hair. In fairness, I think he felt this way about all of us. What had begun as a romantic ideal had ended in weariness and grief. This was the result of producing too many children at too rapid a rate, and then, out of a general sense of indifference, leaving them to grow up essentially unsupervised. My father saw me perform exactly twice over the course of 30 years. The first time was when I played Tamara in a very fraught production of Titus Andronicus at the Delacorte Theatre in Central Park. Sitting in my underground dressing room, shared by all of my fellow actresses, I heard my father's voice rising above the din. When the hell is halftime? Many years later, my father escorted me to a screening of an independent film I'd shot in Ireland with Richard Burton. He agreed to do this because the film was being shown at a theater in Dubuque, Iowa, to help raise funds for a local charitable institution. When it was over, I leaned in and asked him what he thought of it, to which he immediately responded, "Couldn't understand a goddamn word." Curmudgeonly and critical though he may have been, at the root of it, he simply couldn't be bothered. He knew enough about my career to take his jabs with precision. Kitten, a nickname I loved, was more and more often replaced by sobriquets such as Hollywood or Big Shot, and though he made it clear this was all in jest, it always stung. I was careful to conceal this from my father, who was extremely intolerant of petulance and whose response to hurt feelings was to further belittle the victim. If he was unpredictable as a young father, he was seldom cruel. It was only after Tessie died and he'd sold his business that he became increasingly solitary. But when his solitude was threatened, he could move at the lightning speed of a scorpion. We cannot escape our DNA. And as my father advanced into old age, he withdrew into himself rather than become the brute his father had been. As for his mother, my grandmother, none of us was encouraged to come home for her funeral. "Don't bother," my father said to me on the phone. "She's dead as a doornail." And yet, I never ceased to long for his approval, for a warm glance, a wink. I had, after all, danced on his shoes when I was 5. And according to him, it was I who drove him to drink when, at the age of 6 months, I discovered the unutterable delights of solid food and expressed this unbridled passion by dumping whole jars of pureed bananas on my head. It was not disappointment, but rather heartbreak I experienced when, at the age of 7, I felt myself being lifted into my father's arms and heard him say, "This is the last time I carry this one up the stairs. Jesus, she's all there, isn't she?"
Oh.
He could convert himself into a frighteningly perfect gorilla and would chase us through the house until, screaming for mercy, we threw ourselves at his feet. He could roll up the rug and transform the dining room into a dance floor if he had a mind to. For a long time, he made my mother laugh until she cried, and for many years he carried himself with aplomb. When his beauty eroded, he accepted it with apparent grace and went about the business of growing old with discretion and dignity. It's true, he was a terrible miser, and for this he cannot be forgiven. But even this was overlooked when he'd accept a drink, a head rub, or a soft-boiled egg, and looking at you say, "Your ace is in my book, sugar." He had for me a charisma that remained undimmed by time. In his presence, there was always the possibility of love. It hovered ever near, and though it seldom showed itself, it was distinctly real. Occasionally, finding myself alone with my father in the living room, I would sense the distance between us softly closing and something else opening up. It was more than the need for a drink or the sudden impulse for company. It was a silent bridge that we acknowledged, a bridge that ran between us, one that we saw and felt, but somehow could not cross. He would glance up then, as if surprised to find me there. And in that moment, I would read in his eyes what he could not say. And I understood that in this withholding lay all of the sorrows of his life and all of the regret. Where are people? Yes, do you have a microphone?
I don't even know what it is.
Can you, is there a microphone? You? Do you have a microphone? This lady has a question. Can you stand up, love?
Hi, I just want to compliment you on the way how you handled your brother, took care of your mother, and how you responded to her the way she believed that your brother was like her lover, and she was in love with him. I work with people who have Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia, so that's the best way to keep them,
What are you going to do? Yeah. Contradict it? Deny it? Yeah. Defy it?
No.
She's lost it.
Yeah. So, and you talk about how she read Spinoza. Have you yourself read Spinoza?
How she what? Spinoza? She read it in church.
Yeah.
Catholic church. With all of us in the pew. My father at one end, her at the other, with her coffee, and Baruch Spinoza.
Have you read it yourself?
I have. I love Spinoza. And Thank you. Who else? I'll take one of, yes, over here. That lady, that gentleman. I know you're a gentleman.
TJ was a delegate to the 1964 and 1968 Democratic conventions.
He was.
I'm looking for a copy of a photograph of TJ sitting on the floor of the Democratic convention with a woman, I think it was probably in the Chicago Tribune. Do you know in your family archives you have one of those?
Are you talking about my father?
Yes.
Yes. Are you saying, do we have that photograph?
Yes.
Yes, we do.
I'd like to get a copy of that, please.
Who are you?
That woman is my mother.
No! What's your name?
Dan DeLune.
Oh, come on. No, David!
Oh my god.
Oh my god, that's amazing!
Oh my god.
That's amazing!
Holy shit.
You are! Oh, just for a couple of weeks, yeah.
New York City, local one. Broadway, television.
Jesus, isn't life funny? We grew up together. It's so great to see you, and you look so well. I'll get you that photograph if I can, Ben. Take care of yourself, and thank you for coming. All right, questions you will. My mother loved your mother. Nan. Yeah.
No.
I almost made it.
My mother.
Who was your mother?
Nikki.
Nikki. Is Nan your aunt?
Yes, from Dyersville.
Right.
Tom and Nikki were my parents.
I see.
And I also wanted to thank you. Your father motivated my older brother to go to law school.
My father?
Yes. He
He didn't motivate any of us.
put on a paving crew twice a year during the summer.
He did do that. He was good that way.
Yeah.
It's great to see you, Dan. Thank you. Strange we should meet in Ireland. Who's that? How about that person? Can't see you.
Hi, hello.
Hi.
So, first of all, English is not my native language, so I'll try to pose this question well. Sorry. So, both acting and writing, especially fictional writing, as opposed to a biography, come from a place from within. Like you draw from yourself to get that art out there, both the acting art and the writing art. Do you or did you feel that there was a difference, or that you were drawing from different parts of yourself in writing and in acting?
Oh, certainly. In writing, you're drawing from the truth of who you are. In acting, you're drawing from, you're drawing from your personality. You're using your traits to funnel them into another character entirely. Acting is much easier. Acting is slipping into somebody else. You can get away with it all, acting. In writing, you can't get away with it. That's why I'm saying it's a rigorous, exacting business. Yeah. Does that answer your question? Where are you from?
Germany.
I was going to say Germany. Deutschland. Danke, Fräulein. Yes, this gentleman.